Hi, everyone. I am Terrence Todd, and I am truly blessed and honored of the Lord to come before you today to talk about budgeting. Budgeting is always a sensitive topic simply because, it's dealing with money. Money is always one of those sensitive kind of a topics, regardless of where you find yourself. You hear people all the time talk about those who have and those who don't have, and so, you hear all the stories that are going out there. You got those who will always complain about the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. Let's start out with some basic things, and hopefully that this segment would be a tremendous blessing to you because I'm going to share a few tips with you on the importance of budgeting. So let's talk about the importance of it first and foremost. For you Bible scholars out there, the Bible is very clear in many different facets, in many different areas when it comes to money. It's very clear on it. First of all, the first thing the Bible talks about is writing the vision and making it plain. So the first thing I would say to you is when it comes to budgeting, you got to first of all write things down. You got to have a goal. You got to have a plan. And that's all really budgeting is a plan. It's putting your money on a mission. And matter of fact, if you don't tell your money where to go, it will go anywhere. So this is exactly why it has to be written down. So that's the first and foremost thing. The tip number one is to write everything down. And so that way you have a plan for your money. 78%, now check this out, 78% of the U.S., of United States folks, of Americans, 78% now live paycheck to paycheck. Now go figure that. 78%, that's a whole lot. That's almost 80% of the people here in this country. And the reason why I personally believe, and many others personally believe, that people are living paycheck to paycheck is not so much as far as like what you make, it's about what you plan with what you make. It's about what mission you put your money on. So let me share a personal testimony with you real quick before I get into this any further. When I was laid off, from Battle Creek Public Schools in 2012. So many of you know about it. Many of you are locals. You know all about that. What was the issue at that point? Well, the district had claimed to be in a budget crisis. Why? Well, for many different reasons, but we were in a budget crisis. So they had to do what? They had to lay people off in order to maintain their budget. So school districts, organizations, doesn't matter, any type of business, you should also run your household the same way. You have to budget properly in order to survive. So if you don't, then there are cuts that you need to make. And the beautiful thing about budgeting that I figured out during that time that I was being laid off, the beautiful thing about it is that when you properly budget or when you properly put your money on a mission, then you'll know that you are in control and you can make any changes to it that you may deem necessary. And so during that time, it was a very dark time in my life, personally or professionally, and personally, to be honest with you, because financially, had we not had a plan, had we not budgeted, it could have been catastrophic. But the beauty of it all is we learned a whole lot. Even though I made pretty good money during that time, when all of that was stripped and taken away, guess what? My house never foreclosed and our cars never were repoed. Why? Because we learned to live with less. So people in this world, we're human beings. We learn how to adjust to whatever circumstance or situation we find ourselves. But sometimes it's unfortunate. It has to take some big event like that to force you to have to eventually learn how to live inside your means. And so that's another tip that I want to give you. Never live outside your means. And so just because you make more money does not mean that's just more money for you to spend. You want to live your life as if you did not have it. So that way you're stacking your chips, always stacking your chips along the way. So, but again, going back to that, my personal testimony, again, I made a considerably amount of less, but yet God still blessed us in that time because we were good stewards over the little that we have. The Bible is also clear on this. The Bible says that when we're faithful over a few things, God can then make us ruler over many. And that is so true to this day, that God will still continue to bless you when you are a good steward. So that's really what budgeting is all about. And so you got to have a vision, though. You got to have a vision. The Bible says, again, going back to what I was saying before, you got to write the vision and make it plain. Yeah, I cannot stress that more importantly. And so if you don't tell your money where to go, it will just go anywhere. And then you'll find yourself backed into a corner. You'll find yourself in survival mode. And that's really not a good place to be, because whenever people are in survival mode, they get desperate and they'll do absolutely anything. All right. So always remember this. So, and a lot of things is that I want to share with you as well. Another point I want to make is that a lot of people's stress and anxiety really is tied more to money than you really understand or that you're willing to believe. And I'm going to tell you, look at what's going on now in our world today with the whole COVID-19 thing. You know, what did it all come down to? It came down to money, people losing their jobs. And so we're praying and believing God for all of us to eventually rise up out of this stuff. So now we're seeing our country open up a little bit more and people are getting back to work and so on and so forth. But again, you gotta admit, it is a scary time when money's not coming in. And so the first order of business, let me share this with you when it comes to budgeting, not only so much writing your vision, making it plain, but you also have to figure out what's coming in, getting a structure to the point where you know what your revenue is, how much money's coming in. So that could mean from your job, that could mean from whatever side, jobs that you may have or business that you may have. Figure out for your household, what money do I have coming in? All right. So add all of that stuff up, figure all that stuff out. Once you get an idea of what you have coming in, then you'll have a better understanding of what you can, quote unquote, afford. So then once you figure out what's coming in, the second step is to also figure out what's going out. How much are my bills? What are my expenses? In other words, my mortgage or my rent each month. You have insurance, you have utilities. If you have children, obviously those are, children are another expense, right? Grocery bill, traveling expenses, entertainment, all of this stuff needs to be budgeted. So one thing I want to point out, a tool to help you, let me plug this in real quick. Every dollar, so go into your app store, every dollar, there's an Every Dollar app by Dave Ramsey. It's a very good app, but there are several apps out there, but I'm just sharing his in particular because I know it's a very helpful app. But it's called Every Dollar, or go to everydollar.com and you can find it that way as well. But go into your app store and pull up Every Dollar and download the app. And this app will literally help you to structure your budget. So whatever revenues is coming in and your expenses, and it helps you to track it. All right. It will help you to track your money a lot better. Okay. So let's get into it. So one of the first things is once you get a really good handle on your budget. Now check this out. This was an area that I didn't really truly understand at the time, but now I understand it far more better even now. And that is once you get a handle on your money, you got a pretty good system or structure set up. You want to set aside an emergency fund. Usually they say, put about $1,000, to the side for an emergency, because life does happen. I mean, you might need new brakes. I mean, you might need something done with your car, or just whatever may happen. $1,000 tend to be a pretty happy medium for anybody to have set aside for an emergency. And then over time, you can also pay into an emergency fund, because ultimately you want anywhere from 3 to 6 months of living expenses also set aside. So once you get a handle on that, then that actually will be a blessing to you as well. And over time, you'll start seeing, once you really start getting a handle on your money and making it go where you tell it to go, you'll find out the surplus that you really have. Going back to, again, my personal testimony, I was making really good money. All right. I was making pretty good money with the schools. But once all of that got stripped and taken away, keep in mind, I was on unemployment, which was a fraction of what I was making before. But guess what? My house never foreclosed and my cars were never repoed. My family and I still had food on the table. We still had clothes on our back. We still were able to do things. But guess what? We had to scale down tremendously. And so you got to understand, again, not living outside of your means is very important to take note of. Some people want to live this high, fabulous life. You say, well, you only live once. I'm going to enjoy my money. I work hard for my money. Okay, that all may be true. But if you don't write the vision down, if you don't have a goal in mind of where you're trying to be, then guess what? You'll find yourself down the road staring at your kids in the face and saying, hey, I don't have it. I can't afford it or whatever. That is one of the hardest things to be able to tell a child, even when you have been working for 20 plus years, to stare your kids in the face and say, you know what, I don't have it. So it's like, well, what are you doing with your money? For goodness sake, you're making more now than you were making back then, but why don't you have any money? Well, because you haven't disciplined yourself. So this stuff takes discipline, but ultimately the beautiful thing about this whole thing is once you're disciplined and you really get a good, strong handle on your budget, then you'll see that you really do have more than you really need. You know what I mean? I mean, you at least have a surplus. I can't say that you really need because, sometimes, things happen and stuff, you might have to get into, pull 15, 20,000 out the bank to cover some expenses or whatever. So anyway, hopefully this is going to bless you in the long run. So again, go to Every Dollar. Get that. I can't stress that enough. Go to Every Dollar and get the app and download that, and it will help you to structure your budget time and time again. So most people struggle with even understanding what is a budget. Budget is really, again, it's putting money on a mission. You know what I mean? That's really what it is. And so once you start getting a handle on it again, you'll learn how to live your day-to-day life more at peace, more at ease, because you have the surplus, you have the money that's saved up. And again, when people start talking about the haves and have-nots, there's only one fine line between those who have and those who don't have. And that fine line is just simply discipline. People are educated. Some people are educated about money. They understand what money is all about. They understand what it's for. They know that money is a tool, not the rule. And they're disciplined to know what to do with their money. So it's not like somebody is just intentionally going out and robbing people and stealing their people. You find too that people who don't have are always mad at those who do. Well, you got to figure out, why do they have and I don't? You got to ask yourself that question. A lot of times it's just simply discipline. God is a God of principle. Remember that. God is a God of principle. And going back to, like, if you read in the book of Matthew, and I'm getting scriptural on you again, because this is very important. Some people don't believe that the Bible speaks about the importance of being a good steward over your money. But look at Matthew chapter 25. Let's look at the parable of the talents, right? For those of you Bible scholars out there, you know that the parable of the talents, remember, God gave one 5 talents, he gave one 2, and he gave another one 1. Well, what happened? The one who had 5 talents, meaning money, let's talk about money. The one who he gave 5 talents, what did he do with the talents that he gave him? He went out, and guess what? He came back and he doubled his money. And what did his Lord tell him? He called him a good and faithful servant, right? The one who had 2, what did he do? He went out, he took what the Lord had given him, he went out, he came back and brought 2 more. So both of those 2 individuals doubled what they had. And they were both called a good and faithful servant. And then he went on to say, you've been faithful over a few things. I can make you now ruler over many. Enter into the joy of the Lord. But the individual that had 1 talent, what did he do? He went and hid his Lord's money. And when the Lord returned back, he called him a wicked and lazy servant. Now go figure that. He called him a wicked and lazy servant. Why? Because he failed to be a good steward over what God has given him. Do you know that all blessings come from God? Whatever little money we have, it doesn't matter. I can be a billionaire, millionaire. I can just be, somebody who make a few hundred a week. Regardless, those who have little and those who have much, it all comes from God. But I would hate to have it to come to the point where God calls me a wicked and a lazy servant because I was not a good steward over just the few of what I had. Right? So imagine how that individual's feeling. And so what did the Lord tell him? The one that hid his Lord's money. He called him not only a wicked and lazy servant, but he said that you could have at least taken what I gave you and put it into the bank or giving it to the banker. So that way, when I return back, I come back and at least receive interest on the money I gave you. And then it goes on, and see, people forget about this. People ignore this point right here. Then the Bible goes on to say to that one that was a wicked and lazy servant, the Lord said, take the one that he has, the one talent that I gave him, take that from him, and give it to the person who has the 10. Now figure that out. Remember I said God is a God of principle. So most of us today that'll say, oh man, here we go. The rich getting richer, poor getting poor. It's a principle. The one who had more operated or functioned out of a principle that God had given, doubled it. So guess what the Lord said? In other words, I can trust that person with what I gave him. I can trust him with the talent that I gave him. You, my friend, I cannot trust. That's why I called you wicked and lazy. And what little you had, take it and give it to the one who has more. And then it goes on to talk about those who have more shall be given. And those who have few, what few they have shall be taken away, cast them into the pit or whatever. And it says it shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So the Bible is very clear. God is very clear on you and I being good stewards. How do you become a good steward? You first of all have to be disciplined. You have to make up in your mind. You got to be tired. You might, tired of being sick and tired of not having. But it takes discipline, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you the God's honest truth because I apply some of these same principles in my own life. And I'm telling you, it absolutely works. I can go on and talk about the importance of tithing and stuff like that. I won't get into that. But that's another principle that God is all about. Giving God what belongs to him, right? The Bible says that the tithe belongs to the Lord. Would a man rob God? Certainly. In tithe and offering, the Bible says. So I make for sure that regardless of, even though when I was making more or when I was making less, I even tithe off of my unemployment. Now go figure that. That's being very faithful. I had a fraction of what I was getting before, and I still gave God a tenth of what I had. And so, because I just truly believe that it's the will of God for his sons and daughters to be covered, to be taken care of, to be wealthy. I believe that I'm going to be a wealthy person, no question about it. That's been my goal. So when we talk about writing the vision, making it plain, I'm writing that down. I have a vision board. Check that out. I have a vision board on things or just things that I want to obtain in life or to attain in life, things that I want to have, places I want to go. Even get a vision board. That's another strategy that you can have. But remember, none of that stuff is possible unless you are disciplined to budget. You got to put your money on a mission. Money is a seed. The Bible says, if I sow sparingly, I will also reap sparingly. But if I sow bountifully, I will reap bountifully. It's a principle. So when God blesses us with this, now watch this. When the Lord blesses us with these things, God wants to be good stewards. I don't care if it's, a little shack on the hill or a shack in the woods or even a palace or a castle on the hill. The bottom line is that you got to be a good steward. But again, none of this stuff is possible, you guys, without money. And that is where most people's frustrations are to this day. It's all about money. People's health care, the level of health care that you can get, it's all pointed to money. Where you can go, money. Where you can live, money. Which, the clothes you wear or, what you drive, where you can travel. All of this stuff is tied to money. So if you don't think money is important, especially if you don't think it's important to God, you're sadly mistaking yourself. Some people misquote the scriptures and say, money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. The Bible says that the love of it is the root of all evil, but it also says that money answers all things. I guarantee you. So money is important to God, and it also should be important to us, but we cannot have money or cannot have the bountiful blessings unless we're disciplined to budget. So again, going back to some of the things that I want to say again, writing it down, knowing what you have coming in, you got to structure that. Everydollar.com or the Every Dollar app will help you to prepare or put your money on a mission, to know what you have coming in and also what you have going out. If you have more going out than coming in, something's seriously wrong. Listen, my family and I, we haven't had cable in years. And we can afford it. You know what I'm saying? We can afford it. But guess what? Even to me personally, call me cheap, whatever you want, but I believe in delayed gratification. And first of all, because my family and I, we're busy, you know, we're mission driven. I mean, we're not at home long enough to even afford to be paying, you know, close to $200 for some cable and internet, stuff like that. So guess what? We scratched that out of our budget, right? We scratched the whole cable thing out of our budget, and we have the digital antenna, Roku, you know, all of that stuff is important. I would also put a plug in here too. Get into a nice couponing class. You know, we have Sister Kyra and those folks, and Kyra down at the Urban League. You know, she holds classes showing people how to do what? To be better spenders or better shoppers, learning how to save. Remember, every dollar counts. That's why you go and get that Every Dollar app by Dave Ramsey. He's a good Christian man, solid Christian man. And he has a podcast and all that stuff, teaching the people of God or people everywhere how to better plan and put their money on a mission. So again, every dollar counts. So you see the pictures, right? You see the photos on Facebook or any social media. She's got pictures of hundreds of dollars of name brand stuff sometimes, you know what I mean? And she's getting it for a few pennies on the dollar. Nothing wrong with that. But guess what that takes? It takes discipline. This is all a part of your budget. So again, knowing what's coming in and knowing what's going out. If you have more going out than coming in, I'm telling you, you will live your life constantly behind the eight ball and in a deficit. You don't want to be in a deficit. So again, a beautiful thing about budgeting is that you are in charge. So there's something there that's very important. So you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, where do I want to be in a year from now financially? Right? Write that down. Where do you want to be? Or 5 years or 10 years. The bottom line is that you got to write this stuff down, and then you have to make for sure that you budget. So once you get a handle on your expenses, all right? So if you got more coming in than going out, then find out what surplus you have. So if you got a surplus, you know, you got more coming in than going out, that's a good thing, right? But that doesn't mean go and spend it just because you got a little extra. No, maybe put that money somewhere in an investment so that way your money's working harder than you are. A good investment earning you some interest, you know, return on your investment and whatnot. It's a good place to be. All right. Some people like to go out and spend, you know, trying to buy brand new cars, flossing or whatever. Listen, even though I can afford to grab a brand new car, my family and I, my wife and I, we say, look, we want a car, a very nice car. You know, as long as it doesn't have to be brand new. I mean, we want, you know, some low mileage on it or whatever, but nothing over $15,000. Why? Because it's not a really good investment. Because you buy it brand new, you got you got all the bells and whistles, you flossing, looking good or whatever, but who cares about that if you broke at the end of the day? You know what I mean? So get something that's within reason that you can pay it off in maybe a year or 2 years. And then you rock it and roll it. So the key thing is too with budgeting, you should always have a plan for getting out of debt. That's why haves and have-nots exist, because most people who have, a lot of times they have because they did some delayed gratification kind of things. They budgeted, but they also made for sure they got out of debt. The power of money is very important, ladies and gentlemen, very powerful. So get a plan also to get out of debt. Here's a strategy that I want to share with you because many of you know I am in the financial services industry. There's a concept called debt stacking. As a matter of fact, Pastor Hess even talked about this on his radio show and the importance of debt stacking. He didn't use that term, but in the industry that I'm in, we actually use that term called debt stacking. What is debt stacking? Well, I'm glad you asked. Debt stacking is like this. Once you find out what your expenses are, say, for instance, you have, let's say, a Kohl's charge card, right? And you have, let's say, $500 left to pay on the card. Well, let's look at what your debts are, right? And let's pay that off, right? And let's say if your payments per month was like $20 a month or whatever, let's get that Kohl's charge card paid off a lot sooner. Do whatever you can to pay that off. And then what extra you have from there, then apply it to the next thing, right? Say if it's Capital One credit card, you have expenses on that. Then you apply what you were paying towards the Kohl's card and you just shift it to the other thing. So once you figure out the total of your expenses, keep that same amount as if, you don't have that extra, amount coming in, or you don't have that surplus, and you just take whatever surplus you have because you paid something off and you move it down to the next thing all the way until everything is paid off. Or if you have a mortgage or whatever, then you move everything so that way the only debt you have is your mortgage, and I'll share that with you. The only debt that we have, the only big debt we have is our mortgage. That's a beautiful thing. I don't own any cars. All my vehicles have been paid off, and that's another beautiful thing. Let me back up. So when I went through that valley experience, guess what? My truck got paid off while I was in the valley. Go figure that. Why? Because of budgeting. You put your money on a mission. You got to pay attention. What goes unchecked does not get done. You got to pay very close attention. Money is very key. It's very important. It's very important to the quality of life that you can have for you and your children or grandchildren or whoever. You know what I mean? So that's why you have to pay a lot of attention to it. So again, going back to what I was saying before in the importance of budgeting, folks, is that when we look around today, and all of you know that I grew up here right in Battle Creek. When I look at some of our elders and the things that they had when I was growing up, African Americans all over this city, we had several African Americans that owned stuff, right? Now, did they have more money than we do now? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But one thing that they did have, they had a vision. They had a vision. They probably wrote it down. They were very determined on getting things that they wanted. We had black barbers, which we do today. We have black beauty salon, which we do today. But we had people that owned stores, dry cleaners, smaller little food places, little party stores, entertainment venues and stuff like that. We had people that owned stuff. Where did all that go? Where are we at now? You know what I mean? If you look around this city, you look around at our city, in the city of Battle Creek, name a black-owned restaurant outside of Popeyes. And Raffinese. Raffinese, I got to give them a shout out too. But name anything outside of that. It doesn't exist. Why? Because people, what they have, you got to start also thinking about pooling your resources together. It's nothing wrong with building partnerships to have things, you guys. So this all applies to budgeting as well. Find some people that you can trust. You enter into a legal contract or legal agreement and you start a business. We got all kinds of people that's very innovative in this city that's, selling dinners and all this other stuff. That's all innovation. That's all creativity. That's entrepreneurship. But guess what? None of that is possible without money. And so, and sometimes people grow too fast and they neglect to budget properly. Then they end up losing it in less than a year's time. So this takes discipline. So that's why I'm excited to share this information with you all, because it is very key to a society or to a people or to a community to make for sure that you are economically sound. And the only way to be economically sound in your community, in your household, to run a family, to run a business, and so on and so forth, is having the proper discipline to budget. It's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with saying, hey, now you guys can go ahead. Now you go ahead. No, because you got in your mind, I got a vision. I got a plan. And I remember time and years ago, somebody said, you got to have a why that makes you cry. And you know what brought tears to my eyes at the end of the day is that I said, listen, either I'm going to get a better handle on my finances, or I'm going to have to one day look my kids or my children or my daughters in the eye and say, I'm sorry, but I did not plan properly for your life after me. You know what I mean? So all of that's taken care of now, but now we're on a roll. We're on a roll, and we got a better handle on our finances, and we're starting to budget some things. We're starting to say, hey, who cares? We don't need cable anyway, so we cut those things. You're trying to look at all these different programs, have 300 channels, and you're only watching 5. You know what I mean? That's absolutely crazy. That's not disciplined. That's an undisciplined individual. You know what I mean? You're only watching 5 channels constantly every day, but you pay it for 300. You got to cut that out. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a part of the budget. So you always bring your person back to the budget. And if you're married, bring both husband and wife together. Come together and say, okay, boom, we're going to write this budget down. We're going to say, hey, this is how much we have coming in. This is what we have going out. This is how much we're willing to spend on entertainment. This is how much we're willing to spend on, eating out, or just cut out eating out altogether. That takes discipline. I don't have to go to the restaurant all the time at any time. If you cut that out, I guarantee you'll start seeing a big change. If you smoke, guess what? We know that smoking is bad for our health, right? Well, guess what? Let's work on budgeting and pulling ourselves off cigarettes and find out how much money you'll save doing that, right? So if you eat out a lot, or if you like buying clothes and shoes and stuff like that, how about cutting that out and see how much money you'll save? See, these are all things that people do because it helps them to feel some type of way. I don't know if they feel a little bit more important. It brings a sense of joy. I don't know, but for the sake of budgeting, so you can think long term, you got to be disciplined enough to make that happen. So that way you can look down the road, and the next thing you know, you got this nice big nest egg stored up, over some years. And then you can travel and do whatever you want. Live the rest of your life like a boss, as they say. You know what I mean? So again, budgeting is very important. So going back to structure. So what did I say before? So write it down. You got to write this budget down. You got to put it down. That's rule number 1. You got to write this stuff down. All right. Know what revenues are coming in, how much money you got coming in, and know what money is going out. So you get a clear picture. I know my wife and I, one time, we even got a better handle on our grocery bill. Yeah, grocery bill. Figure that out. Groceries is a bill, right? So we put a cap on how much we were going to spend at the grocery store. Family of 5 now. We put a cap on it. So guess what? We're looking for more deals in the store, and some things that we say, well, we'll wait for next time. We'll put some things off and wait for the next go round of grocery shopping, for the sake of not going beyond our budget. And I'll tell you what, it's kind of like just an unspoken thing now. I mean, we have a certain limit that we spend on our groceries, and we just know when we've hit that limit. Say, oh, okay, well, we're good now. But what we did is, once we started budgeting, it allowed us to get laser focused on where's most of our money going, and we found out it was mostly around food. It was mostly around food, and unfortunately, people sometimes spend a lot of money on food and groceries, and then you look up, and the next thing you know, you looking in the trash and you're throwing stuff away because it's been sitting in the refrigerator for so long, and now it's gone to waste. Or maybe you didn't need 2 loaves of bread. You know what I mean? Maybe you should cut down on that. You know what I mean? And buy 1 loaf this time and wait until the next time, the next go around. But little small things like that, you guys, is truly a blessing for you to really get a better handle on a budget, a sound budget on your finances. Because I'm going to tell you, you don't know what you don't know. But when you start getting laser focused on it, it's like, okay, how much did we spend on this? And save your receipts, grab your receipts and say, oh man, we spent this much. Did we really need that? Do we really need that brand? Okay, and I get it. Some brands you just can't live without, because you try the off brands, like, oh my, that's horrible. So I get it, but you got to budget and set that aside and say, okay, man, we got to have Miracle Whip. You know what I mean? We got to have Hellman's mayonnaise, not that off brand. We got to have Fruit Loops, not Fruit Rings. You know what I mean? So there are certain brands that you just simply have to have. I get that. But if I'm going to spend a little bit more on the brand name stuff, then that means I'm going to have to cut back in other areas. All right. So again, that's the beauty of budgeting, because again, remember I said before, you are in control of it. But if you have a person that is undisciplined, watch out. You know what I mean? So find out, if you're married, if you have a partner, whatever, boyfriend, girlfriend kind of a thing, find out who's more disciplined with money and put that person in charge of the finances. Another tip I want to give you guys before I close, Also, download Credit Karma, man. You got to get an app on your phone where you're looking at your credit, because you got to build some credit too, because that's another area of savings, right? Your credit score is really your spending habits. It tells creditors, it tells the bank and people if you are trustworthy with your money. Do you pay your bills on time? So download the Credit Karma app, or one of those apps, or another app that's out there. I don't know. I have Credit Karma. So guess what? I check my credit almost every day. You know what I mean? I check my bank accounts. Another rule, another strategy. Check your bank accounts daily. You got to check them. Why? Because sometimes you might look up and somebody's trying to scam you. That's happened before. You know, I got alerted not long ago. My wife got alerted as well. Somebody somewhere in Texas and Arizona was trying to, charge up some stuff. Thanks be to God that we had the security on our accounts. They weren't able to tap into our account, but we took our card in, they chewed it up, spit us out a new one. So you gotta pay attention to those things. You gotta be a good steward over your finances and look over your accounts. I look over my accounts almost daily, man. Sometimes twice a day. Just checking them. Why? Because I'm being a good steward like God has called me to be. All right. So again, writing things down, see what's coming in, see what's going out. Go to everydollar.com, get that app. If you're not gonna get that app, there's tons of other apps out there to help you budget your money. And it also, here's another cool thing about it. It also ties into your account. You know what I mean? You can actually have it to where it ties into your account, and it will alert you, and it will show you literally detail for detail what you have left or remaining in your budget, in your account. Okay, boom. Yep, you got to move this over here. You got to move this over there. Well, you only have this percentage left in your account. You can't go off and just spend crazily. But my point is that it helps to discipline you. It gives you that discipline. So again, getting Every Dollar, the Every Dollar app is very important, or another app similar to that you feel that works best for you is very important. But at the beginning, you guys, you got to understand it's very important for you to budget, putting your money on a mission. So before I close, let me share this. You've heard the saying that it says that give a man a fish, he'll what? He can eat for a day. Teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. But I took it a step further. He will only be able to eat for a lifetime if he owns the pond, right? You cannot own the pond without money, period. You cannot own the pond without money. Why? Because, and why do I say that? Because even though I know how to fish, if the owner of the pond tells me I can't fish in his pond that day, I can't eat for that day. But if I own the pond, I can fish whenever I get ready, right? I can stock my pond up with whatever kind of fish I want. And this is just, an analogy or whatever, or a metaphor, an example that I'm giving you. But my point is that when you own it, you control it. You can do whatever you want. And that's when you become one of the ones in the have column, versus the have-nots. The only difference is that somebody understands that they had to write things down. They had to be laser focused and disciplined with their money. That's the only difference. They got disciplined with their money. And we should be teaching our children the same thing. Our schools should be teaching our children the same thing. Another idea, another tip is go out and get, I don't care if you got Monopoly or whatever, but maybe get a Monopoly game, or get the cash flow game. That's another good game. Any games that's teaching your child or teaching your family about how to invest your money and stuff like that. Those are things that's very important, because unfortunately our schools have not done a very good job with teaching our youth about how money works. That's what drove me into the financial service industry, because when I was in that valley, I realized this all comes back to money, and I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. There's no worse feeling than to know somebody else is controlling your destiny. Don't allow that to happen. That's not the will of God for somebody else to be in control of your destiny. You should be in control of your own destiny by budgeting, by making for sure that you're disciplined, to have a sound plan together to show your money exactly where to go. All right. So hopefully this was a blessing to you. I know it's been a blessing to my wife and I. When you have a surplus and you have a good budget going, and you see what's coming in and going out and stuff like that, I'm telling you, man, money does answer all things, man. It brings a level of peace you would not believe. You know, it feels good to be out of debt. I'm on a plan now. I'm on a mission to pay my house off ASAP. You know what I mean? Because once you pay your house off, that's another thing. That's another goal you should have. If you own your home, you should be having it. You know, that should be a goal, because once you own it, you know, you no longer pay for it, then you can be stacking that money up, you know what I mean, and investing in it, and then you start businesses and stuff like that, and employing people and build your own empire. That's the beauty of it all, you know. And I strongly commend my fellow board member, Mr. Bean, because he's doing it. You know, he's got Popeyes. He's got several of them now. You know, he's not just in Popeyes. He's got other things too going for himself. So, but what does that cost? What does that take? It takes discipline, and it takes a budget. It definitely takes a budget to run a good, strong business. But most importantly, your home is really your business. That's your first order business. It's your first ministry, really. So your ministry is home first. You know, so you want to make for sure that you run it like a business. Run your household like a business, man. Fine tooth comb through all of that stuff, because money is what helps to make it stay afloat. So anyway, hope this was a blessing to you all. Again, go to EveryDollar app, download that. That could be a blessing to you all to help structure everything. But God bless you all. We'll see you next time on the next video. Take care.